podcast with John Finan, exploring the skilled trades for a future full of opportunities. John Finan is the founder and president of Finan Home Service, a London company that's grown from a one-man electrician to include plumbing, heating, and cooling services. John is also co-author of the book, Trade Up: Why Buy a Job When You Can Start a Career? The book follows a couple of high school students as they explore their futures in the trades. On this introductory episode, John is joined by his book co-author, me, Lisa Brandt. I'm a broadcaster, voiceover professional, and writer. We'll discuss the book and why John is so passionate about the skilled trades.
On my court, I have a family across the way. Both are brain surgeons, and it's a 12 to 14-year process to go from I finish high school till I'm doing this kind of work. And if you don't like it, and I hope they like it, you're stuck.
We'll also share what you can expect from future episodes of the Trade Up podcast. And now, here's John Finan.
Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, John. How did you ever come up with this idea that you wanted to write a book, especially since this isn't your thing?
Just to give you a little bit of the backstory, I'd actually written about 2 chapters of it, maybe 2014, and I shelved it because, frankly, I just didn't know where to go after that. And lo and behold, COVID hit, and I'm sitting at home with nothing to do and feeling sorry for myself. And I thought I better get productive. And we started working together quite closely on the book Trade Up, which is available on Amazon and Kindle and Audible as well for you. So as a contractor and, high school and university dropout, frankly, writing wouldn't be anything that you would have thought I would be interested in. But hey, you know what? I like to add things to my list, and writing a book had been on that for a while. And in fact, actually about 2008, 2009, I actually wrote a much smaller book, and didn't take me a whole lot of time. It was only 52 pages, but it was self-serving, as in some ways this book is as well. It was to give our homeowners that were hiring our company something to think about and something to hand to them after I saw them. So the backstory on Trade Up is that as a contractor, I was called periodically to go to high schools with other people, maybe a financial planner and a hairdresser and an accountant and these sorts of things. And we would go from class to class and basically expose people to what it is that we do. Some classes were interested and some classes were absolutely not interested in the trades. And Trade Up became something I wanted to work on based on one of the classes that I was in where they were not interested in. It was an advanced math class. These 30-ish students were about ready to graduate high school. And of course, none of them had any other intentions but to go to university and get degrees, advanced degrees, and then take over the world as young people do. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to have to do something a little bit different as I explain what being in the trade is. And it got me thinking after that talk about all of the different things that can happen and do happen to most tradespeople. We don't start as an apprentice and pick up a wrench or a multimeter as an electrician would at age 18 and then put it down 40 years later. It's very rare, actually, that most of us are even holding tools on a regular basis after 20 years. So the story wanted to follow the arc and a number of characters that could show that to somebody as a way to start their career.
So historically, I can think of television shows and conversations over the years where people have acted as if the trades were something that you went into when you didn't get good grades instead of going to university because that was supposedly the optimum. Has that conversation changed, or does that still kind of linger about going into skilled trades?
In some ways, it has changed in some subsets. In other sets, it hasn't changed. So, if you think about TV you brought up, so that's a perfect example. When you have to portray a character on a TV show, a sitcom, or, any kind of show, really, stereotypes are kind of really the only way it can go. So the plumber has to have a backside half showing when he bends over, and it has to be a little bit of a chubby guy. If you had a TV show where the plumber was a female, of which there are many, and we have one, that just doesn't work. So you have to have the stereotypes in those situations. But we all assume that knowledge translates into income, and knowing is not doing, and doing is what you get paid for. Nobody does work that's valued the way tradespeople do. So we're trying to reframe that argument and get people thinking, not just as a trade's a good thing, but I want people to understand that you don't get paid for the 4 or 5, 6, maybe even more years of university that you spent. You get paid for the value that you bring. And Canada as a country is, if not at the top, as at the top 2 or 3 countries at any given time for post-secondary educated people. I'm not a super sharp guy, but I do understand supply and demand. So if we've got more than any other country, we got enough. Maybe as a career, you should look at doing something else. And that's sort of the way we approached it with Trade Out.
You're not anti-university or anti-higher education. In fact, you pursued it yourself. It's just the book talks about going about it in a different way.
Yeah, that's right. So, I think back on some lessons that I learned, and mostly through listening to other people, watching successful people and asking them questions and seeing what their responses were to certain answers. So if you think about, a famous story where the instructor puts a can in front of each of the students and there's a pile of big rocks, medium rocks, small rocks, and sand. And the idea is to get all of the material into the can. And of course, if you put in the big rocks first and the next smaller rocks next, that's the only way you can get the can full. So my suggestion for young people is in your prime learning years, which is to say maybe 18 to 22, rather than focusing on being away from home, spending money and for somewhere to live and eating food that's not coming from mom and dad's fridge and not earning money and spending it at university when you could do it part-time. It was always available in the 80s when I, got kicked out of university. I did courses part-time and that was easy enough. It was you mailed your assignments in. But nowadays, one thing COVID taught us is that it's super easy to do it online. And the university didn't actually drop their tuition prices for any of the people that were doing it online. So the value of the education didn't drop any. So the suggestion that I make is that if you start an apprenticeship or you start in a trade at the age of 18 or 19, it's going to take you 4 to 5 years to complete that, which is roughly, a degree in itself. But with doing a couple of courses part-time constantly, by the time you're in your mid-20s, you're a certified tradesperson in whatever your trade is. And you've probably got at least a 3-year degree, if not more. Plus, you've been earning money the entire time. And that is a game changer when it comes to not only starting your career and learning the habits that you need to learn as you're working, but the income you've earned versus the debt or no income you would have had if you'd gone straight to school and just worked part-time jobs.
Yeah, you really set that out in the book, the difference between teacher's salary. So this teacher goes to university and then goes to teacher's college compared to the contractor who started out getting paid as an apprentice, and where they are so many years later. They'd been to high school together, and all that math comes from real numbers in real life, doesn't it?
It does, and in doing some of the research that we did to prove that our numbers were correct, and in fact, when we compare the careers of a tradesperson to the teaching, we're probably conservative on the side of how much of a gap the tradesperson has. I'm not going to give the entire story away. People are going to have to buy the book to see the difference, but it could be more than that and probably is more than that. But what we found was interesting in doing the research is that the government has decided that we need more tradespeople. Surprise, surprise. And what they've done is they will now take tradespeople that have had their qualification for a year. So think 24-year-old and put them through a 14-month training program, and they will get a Bachelor of Education. So you don't even need that 4-year degree, and you don't need 2 years of teacher's college. You can take a 14-month program, get your Bachelor of Education, and then in London, where we live, the Thames Valley and Catholic school boards will put you to work immediately as a full-time teacher, not a contract teacher. And what we call that is moneyballing something. So when I explain that to somebody and explain that you don't actually have to do all of that, don't have to go to, not that you don't want to get the education, but you don't have to forego the income. You don't have to pay the money to the university to the degree that you do if you've been a tradesperson. And they go, oh, interesting. And then I've mentioned this to a few people that are teachers. Then they tell me that, and in fact, that person becomes a full-time employee of the board as opposed to a contract worker that has to do, their time substituting and driving from school to school every couple of days.
Wow. So, for example, we're talking about London for the moment, and there's a housing boom supposedly going to happen, and we keep seeing that there aren't enough tradespeople. Does that mean it's necessarily easy to get an apprenticeship or to get in?
No, in fact, it's harder, and it always was hard in certain trades. So in the province of Ontario, there's roughly 150 certified trades, and it's a complex ecosystem. So you really do have to get some help understanding all of the differences. So, you can be a barber, like put barber on your sign, and you don't need any certification to cut hair. But if you're a hairdresser, you need to be a certified hairdresser, and there's a process to go through that. The same with plumbers and electricians and sheet metal workers and refrigeration mechanics, these sorts of things. And they're all slightly differently managed, but essentially, the trades that we think of, what are called compulsory trades, where an apprenticeship is required, which means you finish your high school, or even before you finish your high school, you have to be working on this. You get yourself indentured to an employer. So that's somebody would come to a company like mine and they would say, I want to become an electrician. And I would say, you seem like somebody we would hire. We'll give you a tryout. And at the end of a short period of time, we'll sign you up. But we can only sign you up with the ministry if we have one licensed journey person that we can match you with. If we don't, we can't bring you on. So you can see the bottleneck that creates, which, in some ways is a barrier to getting into the trade, but in other ways sort of protects you from everybody becoming an electrician or a plumber or a refrigeration mechanic in 5 years and flooding the market and you're out of work.
Right. It almost seems like there was a time, because there's been all these retirements and the projected retirements, that there was a time when people weren't taking advantage of those possibilities, those openings, right? Because we don't have one for one replacing each other or anything like that when it comes to those who are leaving the trades.
No, that's right. And as I said earlier on, many electricians, plumbers, tradespeople in general just aren't on the tools. So, and when I say not on the tools, they're not working in the construction industry in many cases. So, two of the fellows that I did my electrical apprenticeship are and have been for over 20 years. They've been teachers, one grade 8, the other one high school. So even though they were certified electrician, they're taken out of the population that can help the next group come along. So it's really, it's somebody getting their license at, let's say, the age of 25 to 40 that's a likely candidate to be a match. And because the apprenticeship takes 5 years, in my entire career, I'm still in the industry, so a little longer for me, but the average person moving off the tools and out of the ability to take an apprentice can really only bring on 3 replacements for them in the whole life cycle of their employment. For those that can't get in, obviously those that can get in are in, and they've got a pretty plumb job, and that's why they're very high paying jobs. It's because the supply is A, hard to get, and B, very difficult to start. You can't take a 6-week program and become an electrician.
No, of course not. There's a character in the book named Jordan, and he's named after my nephew, Jordan, who's an electrician.
Yeah, I know Jordan well.
Yes, you do. And Jordan not only had great paying work and, with the union and everything, he is now a little land baron. He's got, I think, 6 rental homes, and he's just over 30. And this isn't your standard, here's what the day is like when you're an electrician. He was able to expand his life, his wealth, everything because of this job, this trade that he got. And just look at him go. Every once in a while on Instagram, it's like, oh, bought another property. And, it's like, oh my goodness, you're going to be set for life.
Now, I will say that part of Jordan's success is he comes from your family, because you have a family of hardworking entrepreneurial thinkers. So, it's not becoming an electrician turned Jordan into that. There was a number of other factors that, and continues to still work hard. But I recently did a talk and it was entitled The 3 Reasons Why a Path in the Trades is the Right Choice for 2024. And it's not tongue in cheek as much after I explain it, but essentially somebody might say a job is easy to get, but keeping a job is the hard part. And that's more true in the trades than anything else. And the reason for that is you're measured every day on your productivity, not just as opposed to the standard that the company needs in terms of what needs to get done, but by your coworkers. So let's just assume that we've got a subdivision and there's 20 houses that have to get done in the next 3 or 4 weeks of roughing in, which take about that amount of time for a couple of people. Essentially, there will be the fastest, most productive person, and there will be the slowest, least productive person. And in terms of profit for everybody, the least productive person needs to be moved away. It's just the way it is. So what I like about the trades, it's not for the faint of heart, because if you're not putting in your work, as Jordan, if he wouldn't have finished his apprenticeship, and he wouldn't have had the skills that he currently has to renovate these houses, because he doesn't just buy them. He's able to fix them up and do a lot of the work because he gutted it out, for lack of a better word, and rose above not everybody, but enough so that he was able to keep himself working for that 5-year apprenticeship. And that will set him so much further ahead on his path at 30 than anybody finishing university at age 25, or at least most people. There's going to be some that go on to, have unbelievably rich and fulfilling careers financially, but the vast majority don't. I would say that 40% of first-year students at university don't graduate. The next 60%, maybe only 10% actually get to what they had projected themselves to be. The rest fall somewhere short, and many of them have 15, 20 years of student debt to pay back for that.
When I was a kid, back when the Big Bang just occurred, I remember my parents would always tell me, you want to get into some place safe and you want to get into some place where you can stay. But nobody talked about building wealth or any of that stuff. It was all about safety. And that was, their parents were through the Depression, and it was all about being worried about the future. But I think that there's a broader mindset now when it comes to the future. I mean, how many entrepreneurs do we have? You could be, if you want to be, an entrepreneur as an electrician or a plumber, whatever. I mean, you don't have to stay with one company forever. It's just that there are options, and you can stay with somebody your whole career. If that's what you dig, that's fine, but you don't have to.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I'll just share with you that that's exactly, the entrepreneur path is exactly why I chose the trades. I had always envisioned myself, from the youngest days as a teenager, and it was probably a joke amongst my friends, if John called you up in grade 10 for a party at his house on a Tuesday night, it was likely the whiteboard and the Amway plan was coming out, because I was listening to the tapes and I was going to try to sell you on a membership and get you in. And it was my pool cleaning business and my backyard swimming. It was always a thing. And so after I'd flunked out of university, or been booted out, as I like to say, when I chose the electrical trade, it was specifically for two reasons. Number one is that I knew I could do the apprenticeship and I would be able to start a business. And if it was successful, wonderful. And 30 years later, it's been great. But had it not, and there were times when my wife said, another 6 months, I think you should be going back to work. It's not working out. Then I knew I could. I know that option was always available to me. And it was that safety. I was 22 years old or 21 years old when I was booted from university. And it became very clear that summer that I was not as attractive to females as I had been when I was in university. No prospects, no job, student debt, nothing going for me, at least that somebody looking for their future would say, yeah, that's a guy I want to hang around with. And as soon as I got it, Martha and I had met before that, but, she probably just thought I was a fun guy to hang around with. And then, as I got into the trade and we started to have children, I was in the right spot. There was no limit to what I could do.
And how long have you been married?
33 years this year.
Oh, you must be a lot of fun then, because she obviously stuck around and hitched her wagon, and you hitched your wagon to her. So you guys are a great team.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. It's certainly not my cooking, and we have 3 grandchildren that we enjoy, and a couple of our own children. So it's certainly a lot of fun. But when I look back on it, the only thing I would do differently is I would do it sooner. I would have bypassed university and just gone straight into the trades from high school and done exactly what I'm doing.
Okay, so back to the book. What are you hoping the audience will be for the book, and who would you most like to read it? Besides everybody who has an Amazon account, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So, the original thought was this is a book that all, teenagers, maybe even preteens. So if you're anywhere between 12 and 17, 18, this is the book for you. And that's kind of the vein in which we structured it. I wanted to have some characters that go through and learn lessons, but I also wanted to have some characters that they learn their lessons from that are good role models and actually real people. And they are. Every one of them is fashion, whether it's your nephew Jordan or in some respects, Bob the contractor would be seen as somebody like myself. So I definitely want the kids to read it. But what I realized after talking to kids and talking more about education is that, and it might have been the same 35, 40 years ago when I was coming through. It's just, that's not the way my family was structured. I think the parents have an awful lot of influence on what the kids are doing. And I want parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, basically anybody that's an influencer of somebody between 12 and 20 to read the book and go, that's interesting. I didn't realize that, you could buy businesses after you start a business and you could grow it to this degree. I didn't realize that the RASP money that I've been saving for my child's education could be used for the trades. I didn't realize that there were options to move from one trade to the other. If Jordan decided he didn't like one trade, he moved into another. That's an option, and his skills are somewhat transferable early on. And those are really the lessons that I want people to get. And I want them to think about, especially when I'm talking to people, I want them to really start thinking about the fact that they need to bring value to their employer, whether their employer is somebody else or whether it's themselves. It's really about the value that you bring, not the knowledge that you have. And I think that's one thing that we started to miss. 40, 50 years ago, whenever it was that universities started and colleges started to take off, it made sense. We had many newcomers to Canada back in the 50s and 60s, not terribly well educated compared to where we are today. And to grow the economy, we needed to have a lot of educated people to do that. And now we've gotten to the point that our economy is, I wouldn't say mature by any means, but as it's set, we need people to actually do more stuff. And the next 10 years are going to be Canada's, and London for sure, but Canada as well. It will be a massive amount of change and growth.
I have a little bit of a bias against people who get multiple degrees. I think they're avoiding real life. I do. And unless it's something you're dreaming of and you absolutely have to have all these degrees to do, I call it book smart, people stupid, because you haven't gone out and experienced life and figured out what it's like to work in a company or work for anybody or anything.
Yeah.
You can get too much information. And like you say, it's not everything you've stored in your brain. It's what you're going to bring and how you're going to take that. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a bunch of letters after your name.
No, that's absolutely right. And I say two things to that point is one is the more educated you are, the less options that are available to you. And I'll use the example, and on my court, I have a family across the way. Both are brain surgeons, and it's a 12 to 14 year process to go from I finish high school till I'm doing this kind of work. And if you don't like it, and I hope they like it, you're stuck. You really, what else is available to you after that? You probably, I don't even know what the student debt on something like that would be, but you better like doing what you're doing. And I don't know how as a 20-year-old you would know that you like that. And they get called out in the middle of the night. They work when they don't need to work, when they don't want to work. So that, that's certainly one of the important things. But the other thing that sometimes there's signs and warnings that when you're in a certain frame of mind, you just don't listen to. And I'm in, grade 11 or 12, and I'm at the guidance counseling office, and there's the paraphernalia for us to read to decide what we want to do. And there's a little story, and it's this, guy is talking to a friend of his that's a millionaire. And he said, "Hey, did you see on TV last night the $64,000 question?" That's a trivia show from years ago, because that's how old I am. And he's asking the millionaire, like the guy that answered all those questions and won the money. Man, that guy was super smart. Wouldn't it be good to have somebody like that working for you? And if you did, how much would you pay him? And the millionaire said, I'd pay him $263. And the guy said, "A week? That's even back then. That's not very much." He said, No, you don't understand. That's all I would pay him for his life, because I can buy an Encyclopedia Britannica subscription for that. And that's where the information is. I need people that are going to get stuff done. And knowing is not doing. And I think people lose sight of that.
Thank goodness for people who want to be brain surgeons when we need them. So that's great. Kudos to them. But oh my goodness, that's a lot of school. So the book is fiction based on real life scenarios. But at the beginning of the book, this was your idea, and I think it's a great one, to put in some facts from Ontario specifically. I think we sort of saw it as a bit of a cheat sheet for interviewers, but it's also become clear that this book is grounded in reality. There are facts and figures about how many job openings there are, and there's always incentives for getting into the trades or getting into school. Ontario's put a real push on for skilled trades in the last few years.
Yeah. And, there's an old saying, don't fight City Hall. But if the government is throwing a lot of money at something, it's probably a good idea to take a look seriously at that and decide whether that's something for you. So, for instance, from the apprentice standpoint, the government will give, I think it's might be a $5,000 interest-free loan for the time of your apprenticeship to buy tools. Now, auto mechanics, maybe it's more money. That's not a lot of money if you're an auto mechanic, but I can tell you, as an electrician or a plumber, you should not spend nearly that amount of money. But hey, take all $5,000 and put it in a GIC and pay it back. I think you've got your entire apprenticeship, and then once you're licensed, you have about a year to pay that back. So, take advantage of that money. It wouldn't be a down payment on a house these days, but it certainly will get you a little bit closer. And honestly, they gave it to you. You can do whatever you want with the money. And the other thing is that when you go to school, so an apprenticeship, let's just say it's a 5-year process. During those 5 years, you will have to go away from your employer for about 3 terms of 8 or 10 weeks. So you're off work for about 30 weeks. Well, the good thing is instead of, just being off work and having no income, you get employment insurance. So it's not all of your money, but you get a good bit of money. So you go to University of Western or Fanshawe, they're not getting unemployment to be there, whereas an apprentice is. And they're also giving you a $2,000 check each time you go to school. So they're throwing a ton of money at it. And part of me wonders why they're doing it, but they want to make it super enticing for people to look at. And I think it's important for them to understand it. And most of the people don't understand how an apprenticeship works and why it's so valuable to really work your tail off to get it. And I think that's what I want kids to see the most, is that they get such a big head start. There's no other option they should be considering seriously.
The government has had these trade shows, which we've, appeared at with the book, and Level Up, they're called. And you see kids' eyes just light up when they get to try something they've never tried before. Maybe their parents do something different, something, I don't know, intellectual or officey or something. And they're more hands oriented. And you see them using a drill press for the first time, and their eyes light up and they got goggles on. And it's just a different world. They may not choose it, but at least they get to see it. And they get to try it.
That's right. And, we often will say that, I'm more of a hands-on, or, he's good with his hands. I wasn't. I had no mentors. That changing a flat tire on my bicycle was not something I could even do as a teenager. So when I decided to get into the trades, I had no experience, and it was frankly horrible. I was not treated the way I wanted to be treated. I wasn't working in the right temperature of an environment. It was always too cold. We got started in the wintertime. But there was a satisfaction. And when I first started, we were doing new housing. And there was some real satisfaction, to have finished an entire day where it was really cold. Like, it wasn't fun, but man, to think you'd worked, got this done. And then when the weather was a bit nicer and you had a chance to hang around the house a little bit after the work, to see what you'd actually done. There's houses that I personally wired, 35 years ago is too long, but maybe 25 years ago, that we're back into to do work. And I can see my handwriting on the electrical panel. That's neat to see.
Yeah. I mean, I was in radio, and we used to joke and say we made air. There was nothing left at the end of the day. Where's the satisfaction in that? But to actually see something tangible that you've done well, that somebody is using, is pretty incredible.
Yeah, no, that's right. And at the end of the day, when we talk a lot of, we hear this thing on an awful lot that, I want to have a job that I enjoy. I want to get job satisfaction. Or somebody may say, hey, if you're passionate about what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I mean, that might be true for a minute, but the reality is that it's not true for the length of your career. There's days that it doesn't matter what you're doing. You just don't want to go. I got to get up. That's why I say it's easy to get a job. It's hard to keep a job, because I don't want to say the monotony, but the strain, the hard work of being if you're married, children, car payments, mortgage payments, all of these things, they weigh on you. And I can't think of a job that somebody would say, well, thank goodness I've got this to go to for 8 hours a day. Otherwise I would go crazy. There's nothing that will keep you happy except your own self. And honestly, I think if you're doing good, meaningful work and you're providing for yourself and anybody else you want to provide for, if there's such a thing as happiness long-term, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, positive mindset, discipline. I mean, I'm sure your brain surgeon neighbors once in a while think, if I have to open one more skull, right? Okay, so the book is available on Amazon. The podcast will be hosted by you. And who do you envision talking to? Who would you like to talk to in the podcast?
Certainly would be talking to trades, men and women. So, apprentices, people that have been in the trade for a while, people that have transitioned from being in the trade to something else. I want to hear those stories. I actually want to talk to a financial planner that will be able to, and I might have the numbers wrong, but let's say two 18-year-olds start and one puts $100 away for every month for 10 years and stops. And then the other one starts at age 30 and puts it away, and how much more money the person that started earlier makes. It'll be the same with starting working as opposed to starting your career going into school and accumulating debt. I just want to have people walk through those numbers. RESP money is not insignificant. So the government will give you grant money, which anybody using an RSP, that's why you do it. And then there's growth, which of course the money that's in there grows. And it's completely acceptable to take that money out and put it into the career of somebody that's starting into an apprenticeship, which it's not how we structure it in the book. We use that money for Fouad's family. Absolutely worthy and a wonderful idea in that situation, how he could help his family out. But it could be transferred to the student so that they could buy a house. Everybody complains it's hard to buy a house. It's available. You just have to make sure that the big rocks go in the jar first.
The wealthy barber meets straight up, sort of, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did a wonderful job writing the story, so it really reads well. There's not a week goes by I don't have somebody that I know reach out to me and say, wow, that's fabulous. And I say, awesome. Lisa wrote that.
Well, yeah, but you had to approve it and make lots of suggestions. It was really a team effort. So
yeah, that's true.
And it was some of the most fun I've ever had writing. It was just an absolute hoot for me. I'm very proud of it as well. So to find you, tradeupbook.ca.
That's right.
People can find you there. You can email you at john@tradeupbook.ca.
I would like people to send in any questions that they have, suggestions of guests, and it may be themselves. Happy to talk that conversation. And honestly, I think if we're going to have a podcast that is going to have value, I'd like to have somebody on that completely disagrees with this, that says, no, you're going about it wrong and this is what you should do, because I'd like to have that dialogue with somebody.
That's a great idea. I would like to hear you go toe to toe.
Yeah. And you know what? It wouldn't be so much you say this, I say, no, that's not right. It's this way. I would just like to understand somebody else's perspective. And recently I was speaking to a number of people at a home show, and we trying to direct people into the trades at this booth. And a lady she had 5 children, and I think the youngest was 10, the oldest might have been 18. So pretty busy family. And she had said that her oldest daughter, she was going to send her to university in the fall, knowing full well the girl was only going to be there for a couple of years. She said she will not graduate. She doesn't like to do anything and stick with it. But I want her to get out of the house and have that life experience. And I thought, oh boy, not a good recipe for starting. How about we spend a lot of money to help you prove to yourself that you can't actually complete a task? I think that's bad. And another lady was telling me that her son was looking to get into the trades, but couldn't find an apprenticeship. So what she was going to do is put him into a program where he could take 2 years and try a bunch of different trades, basically pay a college or a private college to do these things. And that was going to help him understand what he wanted to do. And my face must have spoken, because I didn't say a word. She looked at me and she said, "You don't agree?" And I was, yeah, you're absolutely right. Why would we take 2 years of this young man's life and put him into an environment where, he's not going to get fired because he didn't work hard? You're going to spend money, and he's not really ever going to learn about life inside a classroom. He needs to get out and see who he is related to all the other people that he has to compete with.
Right. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer. And as soon as I found out how much time I had to spend in university, it was forget that. I want my life to start. Yeah. I want to get things going, right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Well, this has been a great conversation, Lisa.
I think it's been very good. I think the 2 people involved in it have been excellent.
Nobody disagreed with us. How can we complain about that?
The Trade Up Podcast with John Finan. Please subscribe so you'll be notified of a new episode every month. And visit the website tradeupbook.ca. Questions or comments? An idea for an upcoming guest? Email john@tradeupbook.ca.